Here with me now is a renowned professor in Notre Dame's Department of English who recently published this generation's first full-length comprehensive biography of American literary legend Henry David Thoreau. The book, Henry David Thoreau, A Life, truly does bring the writer to life and was published to substantial critical acclaim. And Professor Laura Walls joins me now, and congratulations very much on your success. And I understand you recently, another kudo for this book.
Yes, just on Friday evening I learned that the book had been awarded the Los Angeles Times Book Award for biography, so that's an immense honor.
Okay, and your book was published in July of 2017 to coincide with Thoreau's 200th birthday. What inspired you to do this research and write a new account of his life?
Well, the biography that had come out before that was published in the 1960s. So as you can imagine, in the decades since, we have a lot of new information about Thoreau. We have more letters, we have more manuscripts, but maybe even more important is we have a new perspective on his life and on the importance of it. We have the rise of the environmental movement. We have the rise of the civil rights movement, of women's issues, of Native American studies. And all of these are important perspectives to bring to thinking about the life of Thoreau today.
Okay. And you once said we have misread Thoreau tragically. What did you mean by that? And does this biography try to clear all that up?
Well, I try. I hope it has some effect on the stereotypes people have about him. He's really come down to us as a kind of, it's called the two Thoreau problems, right? The sense that there was the Thoreau of nature who wrote Walden, and there was a different Thoreau who wrote Civil Disobedience and stood for social justice. And there's a sense that somehow these two are not connected, which of course is hardly true. And I would hate to think that we assume that to love nature would mean to hate humanity. So to speak of Thoreau as being somehow a misanthrope has to be corrected. In fact, Thoreau's deep love of nature was an expression for his love of all creation. So in his writing, he expresses in the concept of the wild a notion of the kind of divine or transcendence in our lives. But then he also expresses concepts of turning to the earth as a way of speaking of the stewardship of the earth and our home, and of the kind of common good that we need to work toward together. So he speaks much of the commons.
Very interesting. Now, during your research, did you discover anything about Thoreau that people might be surprised to hear?
Well, yes. I was amazed to find how hard he worked. He writes a lot about leisure and about sort of loafing and taking his ease as a kind of working one day in 7, for instance, and using the other 6 to enjoy life. And I think one reason he wrote that was that he himself worked so very hard. And I was astonished to find out sort of his day-to-day schedule and things like how concerned he had to be with earning money to contribute to the family. I was surprised at finding out how many friends he had, at how wide his circle of friends were. I knew that he had 3 or 4 very good friends, but many more kept coming out of the correspondence and the travels. I was also surprised and really saddened to learn how much he left unpublished at the time of his death. He did publish a lot during his life, but he died very young. He was only 44, and he had an immense ambition and many manuscripts that he just never lived to finish.
Yeah, and 150 years after his death, how applicable is his writing today?
I think it's more applicable right now than ever. He had a firm sense that we needed to ground ourselves in reality, to really build up from that grounded sense a kind of orientation to truth of the world, of the natural world, but also of the social world, and who we are and who we can be to each other, that should be built on a foundation. And so I was very moved when I read Pope Francis's Laudato Si, at the convergence between their thinking from 2 very different traditions. They both come to articulate what Pope Francis called an integral ecology. And in that he calls us to recognize that our current crisis is based both on environmental problems, but also on social problems, and that the two cannot be separated. That's what he means by integral, that they're ecologically interrelated. And if you look at Thoreau's writing, Walden would be the best known. He has much in especially the opening pages, about the same kinds of problems, about rampant consumerism, for instance, which distracts us from the essentials of life.
Okay. Well, Laura Walls, thank you very much for joining us today, and it sounds like a fascinating read. Appreciate your sitting down and talking.